reputation to live up to. And I would like to take you through a conversation on what the digitalization of the supply chain entails and where the opportunities are. So, joining me, I would like my panelists to introduce themselves because I realize it's easier to remember people when they tell you who they are. So, I have 4 panelists here, and I would like them to introduce themselves, tell us who they are, what they do, and a little bit of why they said yes to come and be on this panel. I'll start with you, George. Tell us what you do and why you said yes to the panel.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is George Gishuhi, CEO and co-founder at Fragility. At Fragility, we are focused on providing on-demand warehousing and fulfillment solutions in the African market. And essentially, I'm delighted to be in this space because essentially of what we do at Fragility. We are coming from an area where, for example, warehousing has remained to be very traditionally operated, and yet we have had disruptions around e-commerce where we need to align the warehousing, the infrastructure that is needed to derive value, for example, in e-commerce, but that has not happened because it's remained to operate in a very fragmented market, the way things run. So I believe this is the best forum and the best panelists that I can sit along with to be able to share the experiences we've been able to build and look at how best we can be able to tap into the real value of the Industry 4.0. Thank you.
Mesh, how are you? Please tell me some of the opportunities that you saw. Well, what made you start Sandy, by the way, and what the opportunities that you saw? And then you can tell me why you said yes to this panel.
Yeah, my name is Mesh, co-founder and CEO at Sandy. We provide an Amazon level fulfillment, full cycle fulfillment service for businesses across the continent. That's Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, and Cote d'Ivoire. And the reason why I started Sandy, one of the things that still basic for me is, for us to actually make progress across the continent, I think trade is going to be a significant part. And that trade needs to be easy. And for trade to actually happen, you need logistics for the markets to also work. And I say yes to this panel because I believe, solving the logistics problem that we have across the continent, that's both the supply chain and the demand chain, requires a whole ecosystem and a whole community to build. I don't think Sandy will build it alone. So it's really exciting to have brilliant entrepreneurs on this panel to discuss these issues. That's why I say yes.
All right. So, Mark, introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Mark Mwangi, and I'm the CEO and founder of Amitruck. Amitruck is a delivery marketplace. We connect businesses to transporters across Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda. I think for the reason I accepted to join the call was the opportunity to meet other like-minded people solving big problems. I think supply chain is going to be a critical part, not just of business in Africa alone, but also taking advantage of things such as the African Free Trade Zone Agreement that's coming up. I think it's a huge problem and one that's interesting to solve. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I'd also like to point out that Mark is replacing Kane Wanjao. We had hoped that he would make it, but he wasn't able to. And Mark was very kind to step in almost at the last minute. So thank you for being here, Mark.
Pleasure, thanks.
Peter Nyangui, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and why you came here. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Carol, and CIO folks, DXY, for inviting us here. For me, first of all, being in this panel is actually quite an honor because I think when we talk about making changes in the logistics space, these are the guys that are actually making those changes. So very much glad to be here with these guys. So I run a company called Gobeba, and Gobeba is an e-commerce platform that is anchored on distributed logistics. We run micro fulfillment centers around the cities, starting, of course, with Nairobi, which helps us distribute essential goods such as water, gas, and we do that through our own demand platforms. And we also work with brands and manufacturers who want to reach customers directly. A lot of manufacturers are trying to do that because they want to cut the middleman. And so we provide that infrastructure that can help them distribute their goods directly to consumers without having to go through a chain of distributors, wholesalers, and small retailers. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm happy to hear what we can do to solve some of the big problems with retail logistics in the continent.
All right. Now, Mesh, I remember when Sandy was still young, I actually sent a parcel to a fashion designer, of all people, and I found the service quite new and very interesting at the time, but you've since grown, and now you're looking at the supply chain, which was affected by COVID. But when you look at the opportunities that are available, for instance, how would someone like you find the right partner? Do you have a list of things that you check, or do you know, do their values align to yours? How do you usually pick a supplier?
I mean, it depends with this. I mean, that's what that question depends on the supplier that we're talking about or a partner we're talking about. But also, I think our core partnership segment that we have is actually the actual delivery drivers that drive on our platform and actually make the deliveries themselves that complete our supply chain and also the demand chain side. And some of the things we look at, of course, is alignment in terms of delivering that customer experience to our sellers or the retailers that we actually work with. So driving the value, aligning on values to drive that customer experience to be able to get there. Of course, a shared vision in terms of this is a problem we want to solve. We want to make this efficient. So them being willing to adopt and use tools, technology tools that we build to be able to help build those efficiencies to lower costs, cost to serve or transportation costs to some of these businesses. We know when that happens, and things become cheaper and affordable to the end consumers, and it's a win-win. It's a win-win for us. We're also looking for one of the things we look at basically entrepreneurs. I mean, we run a network of delivery providers who are entrepreneurs themselves. And for us being able to work with a network of entrepreneurs to make that happen is one of the things that we look at. We'd love to have many entrepreneurs in our transportation or delivery network.
So what makes it for a strong network? What makes your network have a backbone that you can rely on?
I mean, what makes it is when everything is coordinated and connected and transparent. That makes it reliable as well. I mean, I would say we're in two business. I mean, the logistics space, which is I would say is more tactical. I mean, you can calculate, more rational. But at the same time, because we drive supply chain, I mean, your end consumer are expecting a growing consumer demand in terms of service levels and all that. So you also have to manage that, and that's where things like transparency come into play. Today, most consumers, you don't want to order products from a seller or from a business, and you can't track it, for example. So transparency is very key for us to be able to make that strong network. Everything has to be connected. Data has to be available at every single stage or process for us to be able to make that network strong.
All right, great. Now, George, when we first met, you were doing Jasiri as a tech entrepreneur, and you were George the errands guy, and there wasn't an ecosystem to support you when you started. But now you've moved into a very different business of Fragility where you're doing warehousing. Now, first of all, what's the difference between a dark store and a warehouse? Is there a distinction?
Thank you. There's an interesting thing about warehousing. People in Kenya, when you ask somebody, I'm looking for a go down, that is what people confuse with a warehouse. A go
Oh.
down will be definitely something that you just store goods. A warehouse is actually a dark store can still use either a warehouse or even, for lack of a better word, a customized infrastructure solution to be able to operate where you don't have customers walking in and you fulfill from such a premise. So, for example, when we talk about warehousing, this is especially with the era of innovation, we are looking at how do you even give users or e-commerce brands visibility around if somebody is buying from your favorite e-commerce shop, rarely do people have a picture around what happens behind the warehouse. That is the pick, pack process. And the transition actually from Meran's Guide has been really interesting because in the previous life, I was doing a lot of last mile logistics. And in part of understanding some of the gaps that were affecting some of the customers I was serving, what infrastructure is required to be able to provide the logistic solutions that are needed. And warehousing forms a very important part. And I know Mesh will confirm this because some of the solutions they are offering their customers, they will need to use a warehouse. A warehouse is so integral, but based on how we've known warehousing, we've not looked at it as a key value addition in the way we do supply chain. But as time goes by, people are actually realizing that you can look at warehousing from a last mile warehousing solution that makes sure that, for example, if you are doing your last mile logistics, you are moving goods from a warehouse that is near your customers. But also in terms of innovation, how well can we be able to improve processes around warehouses? And a lot has been happening like around robotics in these warehouses. So it's an interesting space that we are in. And just to briefly answer your question, that actually a dark store and a warehouse, both of them are similar, for lack of a better word. That a dark store, you don't need actually to have even customers coming in. You can fulfill from the same place. But happy to discuss more on the same.
I think between you and Mesh, I finally understand what customer fulfillment means. I always thought it was just a fancy way of saying customer service or customer support, but now it makes more sense. Yeah. Mark, when you're looking at your business, Trucks, what are the benefits of digitalization? Because you're trying to expand Pan-Africanly, but you also need to have the right technology, you need to have the right know-how, you need to have the right people. So you also need to have gone through digital transformation. So how have you been able to do this?
Yeah, so Amitrak currently benefits businesses by using technology to securely and cost effectively take advantage of the installed local fragmented fleet of vehicles. And the benefits can be both commercial as well as social. On the commercial side, Amitrak's customers can access thousands of trucks, and they can then have this capacity quite flexible without any of the capital investment you would require for the sort of traditional captive fleets. This means that during peak seasons, you can ramp up capacity and ramp it down during low season without any of the disadvantages that you'd normally have historically. And also introducing technology enables business customers to connect to digital estates directly to our platform. This means that you can automatically place orders, whether you're using an ERP or if you have an e-commerce system. That means that the customer then is enabled to move digital documentation, so things such as proof of delivery as well, and the removal of human error. And the speed of technology means that you see huge improvements in your operational efficiency on the transport bit of your supply chain. And then finally, like most of the other guys, other than just removing the middleman, you also improve transparency and collect data which you can business can use to allude to further business insights. And then really quickly wrapping up on the CSR side, Crowdsourcing means that you use the installed fleet of vehicles much more efficiently, so it's much greener. We pass income to lower income families as well as power small business supply chains so that businesses leave the environment they're working in better off. And then finally, and this is an interesting one that's just beginning to happen, is we've seen more and more women become included in the supply chain. At least at Amitrak, we now have women transporters helping our businesses enable SME supply chains. So the benefits are really great for digitization.
Does the diversity and inclusivity actually change the way the business has worked before? Does it change the bottom line? What does having women in the thread of supply chain actually mean for the industry?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest benefit for us obviously is commercial in the sense that you enable your customers to meet some of their SDR requirements. It means that, for large multinational businesses, they see the advantages of being perceived to be helping more. But it also means that when we are working away and going through difficult times in the business, we know we're having a positive impact on leaving the world a better place, which, doesn't always show up on the income statement, but it's nice for team morale and for us as a business.
All right. Peter, with GoBeba, how do you get manufacturers to reach, or manufacturers or brands reach their customers directly? What are the logistics or infrastructure that they need in order for them to attain this ambition? Do you have a solution to this very big problem?
Yeah, I think it's such a huge problem, but I think we're just getting started. And I think what brands and manufacturers are realizing is, if a product has about 15% margin to the distributor, usually that product, by the time it gets to the customer, has probably about 40% margin. And in between there, there's quite a bit of margin that they can actually take back. But of course, the route to market is the biggest challenge. And what digitization has done already in the front end of websites and apps is that these manufacturers can actually build their own apps and build their own websites. And customers could probably be able to order things. But then how do you get to that consumer who is somewhere in the suburb? And so what we've done is to craft these micro-fulfillment centers, which I think George is also calling dark stores. I think the concept of dark stores comes from, if you look at retailers today, if you walk into any of the big retailers today, you'll find that the space that they occupy, 65% of that space is walkways, right? So folks walk into the store and they need an aisle. They're in the aisle and they have something they are pushing that they are cut. And 65% of the space is actually just for that. And this is very expensive real estate. And so when e-commerce started growing, a lot of people got into the whole thing of centralized logistics. So we have Nairobi, which is about 5-kilometer radius. And you want to serve everyone in Nairobi with one central warehouse, and the trucks go in there and then they have to move around Nairobi, which is kind of 5-kilometer radius. So the concept of the dark store or the micro warehouses, which is a bit smaller, is that you can have these smaller warehouses built close to customers in suburbs, which probably serve 5-7-kilometer radius. And so that's actually what we built. So in other words, instead of thinking about the economies of scale as has been known in basic economics, we think more about the economies of density. So we have these little micro warehouses in different locations near the customer. So when the manufacturer wants to distribute their things, they come and forward stock those things in our micro warehouses. And from those micro warehouses, then we can deliver to the customers much lower cost when we do point-to-point deliveries. And also at a much faster speed for customers who might need those things faster. So that's the way we execute with manufacturers.
Interesting. So this for all of you because you're all looking to expand beyond Kenya. When you're looking at the supply chain, it can come in silos. You know, different departments have different rules, and then they don't necessarily speak to each other. So how do you make sure that you break these silos and that all of this, the whole value chain, is connected? So any of you can answer this one.
I think I can just start off by saying that, it's good that we are having these conversations. The way supply chain has been looked at, has been looked out like even before COVID, was supply chain was another small department. Actually, if you hear most big organizations, they talk about a procurement department. So logistics is known as something to do with transport. But how best we can be able to improve this ecosystem is by number one, having conversations like this, by pushing an agenda, a conversation that actually supply chain, the infrastructure around logistics is what is key. That as much as we are building customer-facing solutions, we should also be able to figure out how well do we deliver these solutions. And in figuring that out, we start creating synergies, building synergies so that even the person who is doing pricing at finance or sales or marketing, they are well aligned even from a point of what would it require for me to deliver this service to a customer that I'm actually pitching a solution to.
Okay. All right. Mark?
Yeah, I think already I'm already connected to many of the players that are speaking here today. So I think there's a natural push in business, natural attrition that you find that the economic forces are already pulling because it makes economic sense. And I think that's what startups are all about is you're actually solving problems. And as you begin to add value, it actually starts to make economic sense to have the entire supply chain working seamlessly. And I think that, business forces will force us that way, whether it's through collaboration or through sector consolidation, through M&A. I'm not sure, but I think I already see the natural forces pushing us towards working more seamlessly together.
Okay. So you all work together, all four of you. You know each other in the same industry.
No.
You all work together.
I am connected to some of them.
Just checking. So then, Peter, how do we add value to the entire value chain? Yeah. Yes, Peter.
Look, I think one important point to add here is that what I'm observing now is that supply chain or logistics is actually moving from what could have been seen as a cost center to actually a profit center for many businesses. And the reason for that is that with digitization, especially on the consumer end, e-commerce is here to stay, and the convenience with which people are starting to discover the way they can organize their lives much more efficiently just means that logistics has to be at the center of enabling that convenience to happen. And so a lot of businesses are seeing it moving from some back room that used to be seen as a cost center to actually the front end of innovation because it's starting to drive demand of goods and services to them. So there is a natural, there is a very natural, skilled way of starting to look at the infrastructure around logistics and the services around it to be critical in making counter profits for businesses and even diversify the revenue streams.
Hey, Mesh, just one last question. How do you bring your team together when you create a bigger picture so that they can see all the cross-functional areas in the business? How do you bring that to the center or to make it part of the business?
I mean, it boils down to speaking to customers and focusing on customers. It's the simplest way to actually align to. And then for us, that's what we do internally. is focusing on the customer. If we understand and the whole team understand what our customers are trying to achieve, the miles of the tunnel make, then naturally we see teams converging together towards solving those problems. And of course, measured by outcomes. The outcomes that are related to selling that to customers and then to us. I mean, one of the questions that we're trying to answer for our customers, how can they sell more? And that actually connects back to a lot of things, but also tied to the earlier question on this businesses that we serve, how do you also help them make sure that they're not working in silos? And to what the other panelists have said, I mean, traditionally, supply chain and demand chain are kind of be in separate departments and yes, working in silos. One of the things we've done over time is kind of go back to what I just said is what is this business owner achieve? What milestone of the channel make? What question of the channel answer? And how can we help them answer that? And we basically now work on that and connect the dots backwards. And what we've noticed is when we take that approach, it's very easy to align everyone. So for us, instead of us just going to now the traditional procurement teams, now we are basically like, okay, what actually drives that? Can we also talk to your demand chain team? Because it's the demand chain team that actually drives the supply chain team. And how do you actually connect those together to be able to create those efficiencies, have these businesses sell more, but at the same time also help them connect better margins.
Okay, so for every one of you, I have only 3 minutes left. I'd just like you to tell me what is the future of the supply chain in one word. George?
Synergies, creating synergies is key.
All right, Peter?
Yeah, I think automation and tech is going to be at the center.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, so Peter stole my answer. I was definitely going to say that automation and tech will still in.
All right, and Mesh?
I think it's going to be connected.
All right, great. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I have seen a few messages going around. So, if you ever meet and have coffee and something brilliant comes out of it, please name the baby after me. And thank you so much for your time. It's been great to have you. Yes. So that brings us to the end of the panel.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, I appreciate it.
This brings us to the end of the event, actually. So Smart Industry 2022 has been great. It has been wonderful to have you all here. And it's been wonderful to have the speakers, the panelists, and the moderators. Thank you so much for your time. And also Little Cab for being our partners. You've been great and you're awesome. To everybody else, thank you for tuning in. And we will see you at our next event.